The Utah Mammoth's offseason just got a little more interesting. The franchise has filed for salary arbitration against Jack McBain. So what does that mean for McBain and for the front office? Let's break it down. Jack McBain is a restricted free agent, and his previous deal was a 2-year, $1.6 million annual average value. In order to retain his rights, the Utah Mammoth extended Jack McBain a qualifying offer that was reported to be right at the number necessary to qualify to retain his right. In fact, it was reported at being a repeat offer, right at 1.6 million AAV. The offer is required to be a one-way contract, so that's where they are in their negotiations at the very least. But here's the deal. McBain's camp clearly did not like the offer. The argument is there for McBain's representation. McBain is a really interesting player. He's big, 6'4", 220 pounds, plays a heavy game, works hard on the forecheck, and plays center in the bottom six. And he can be used in shutdown assignment duties. And not only that, he's a willing enforcer that protects the young star players. He fights and holds accountable any nonsense. People don't want to fight him. In other words, he's exactly the kind of player that teams love having in the playoffs. That's McBain's agent's argument. A player like that is deserving of more than $1.6 million a year. So they don't sign the offer from Utah. And in the renegotiations, it appears that Utah has not moved up enough in the salary to appease McBain. So McBain opens himself up to having an offer sheet extended to him by another franchise. If McBain were to accept the offer, Utah would have an opportunity to match that offer and retain McBain's services, or decide not to match and let McBain walk, and then collect draft picks as compensation for their troubles. If McBain didn't have any offer sheet negotiations that looked promising, he could have elected to take the Mammoth to arbitration on July the 5th at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. McBain chose not to elect for arbitration, perhaps signaling an acceptable offer sheet was in the works for him. Now, at this moment, you may be wondering the following question. Why are teams able to retain the rights to a player that they don't have under contract? These restricted free agent protections help teams recoup value from the time and resources they've invested in developing young players. Something especially relevant in the case of Jack McBain, who was a third-round project that has worked out in part to his own hard work, but also the good work of the organization. So, Jack McBain doesn't accept Utah's qualifying offer, nor does he accept any of the offer sheets that have been suggested in the negotiation with other franchises. And July 5th comes and goes, and he does not take the Mammoth to arbitration. Does this leave Utah left to simply meet the demands of Jack McBain or wait until another franchise does? How does that represent protections given to teams via restricted free agency? Well, in this case, and it's a very rare occurrence, the franchise can preserve their rights to a player by a team-elected arbitration. And that's the action that the Utah Mammoth have done in relation to Jack McBain's contract negotiations. The benefit to the Mammoth is that it blocks other franchises from making an offer sheet to Jack McBain. And by initiating arbitration, Utah prevents other teams from submitting any offer sheets, and it forces a resolution before training camp, eliminating the risk of a contract holdout. What happens when there's a team-elected arbitration? Well, since the Mammoth elected to take McBain to arbitration, McBain gets the following leverage. He gets to decide the term of the contract. That contract's only going to be 1 year or 2 years. And then there's the arbitration hearing. And here's how that works. Both sides, McBain's agent, who is Patrick Morris, and the Mammoth front office, Chris Armstrong, submit their desired salary for a 1 or 2 year deal. Then, in a closed-door session, a neutral third party, the arbitrator, hears each side's case. The evidence provided is strictly limited to the following: performance stats, games played, injury history, and leadership qualities. After that, the arbitrator studies the case and chooses one number for the compensation, and it's final. No negotiating afterwards. So this isn't a compromise, it's an either-or ruling, and both sides have to live with it. Regardless, Jack McBain will end up under contract with the Utah Mammoth again. It is believed that McBain will likely opt for a 2-year deal, and the reason that he'll do that is that the 1-year deal will result in him being a restricted free agent next season all over again, where a 2-year deal ends his rights obligations to the Utah Mammoth and allow him to become an unrestricted free agent, thus upping his ability to negotiate with whomever he'd like and take the best possible contract available to him. The arbitration hearings are set to take place between July 29th and August the 4th, and until then, both sides can continue to negotiate. And if history is any indicator, there's a strong chance that this gets resolved before it goes to a hearing date. That's what happened last time, except that McBain, when his contract ran out, he decided to have a player-initiated arbitration. And then the deal was announced the morning that hearing was set to take place. And hopefully that's the way this thing turns out, because if it goes to arbitration and it just ends coldly with a arbitrator, third party, making it come together between the Utah Mammoth front office and between McBain's representation, that doesn't speak very well to the relationship that those two sides have and the long-term prospects of Jack McBain being in Salt Lake City. But for now, until they arrive at some sort of contract negotiation that gets announced before arbitration takes place, Jack McBain and the Utah Mammoth are heading to a high-stakes salary showdown that won't be decided by McBain's representation or the Utah Mammoth front office. Kind of weird. What do you think is a fair number for Jack McBain? If the contract gets decided via arbitration, what do you think the odds are that Utah and McBain can make it work out when he's an unrestricted free agent in 2 years' time? Drop your thoughts in the comment. Also, if you learned something today, give a thumbs up on the video, and if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing, as this is the place for Utah Mammoth fans.